First contact and fatal miscalculation. Supreme Commander Thrax of the Phyrexian Empire stood before the massive observation window of his flagship, the inevitable Conquest. His 6 eyes narrowed as he studied the small blue planet growing larger on the main display. Earth, such an unassuming name for what his scouts had assured him would be their easiest conquest in decades. How primitive are they exactly? Thrax asked, his voice a gravelly rumble that echoed through the command deck. Science Officer Kella approached with a data pad, her iridescent scales shifting from blue to green under the harsh lights. They've achieved rudimentary space travel, Commander, orbital stations, a small lunar base, some exploration of their neighboring red planet. No faster-than-light capability. Their global military forces are divided by nation-states with varying degrees of technological advancement. Thrax's upper mouth curled into what passed for a smile among the Phyrexians. Perfect. Another species that will kneel before they even understand what's happening. Strategic Officer Mevex, a veteran of 17 planetary conquests, cleared his throat respectfully. Sir, if I might suggest a more cautious approach. Our intelligence reports indicate unusual patterns in their historical development. Elaborate. Thrax commanded, not bothering to look at the officer. Their technological advancement curve is abnormal, sir. Most species take centuries to progress from basic flight to space travel. The humans accomplished it in under 70 years. They've also dedicated an unusual percentage of their research to weapons development. Thrax waved a clawed hand dismissively. All the more reason to strike now, before they become a genuine nuisance. Prepare the first wave. We'll follow standard protocol, neutralize their major military installations, then demonstrate our power by eliminating a few population centers. They'll surrender within their planetary rotation cycle. As you command, Mevex responded, though his auxiliary breathing slits flared with concern. 12 hours later, as the first wave of Phyrexian attack ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, Thrax observed from the command deck with anticipation. The humans had detected their approach days ago, but had made no meaningful attempt at contact. Typical of species at this development stage. Paralyzed by fear and indecision. Weapons are primed, Commander. First targets are their primitive nuclear launch facilities, followed by their largest military bases, the weapons officer reported. Proceed, Thrax ordered. The first salvo of plasma torpedoes streaked toward Earth. On the tactical display, Thrax watched as they approached their targets. Then something unexpected happened. Sir, the humans are intercepting our torpedoes. The tactical officer shouted, disbelief evident in his voice. Thrax leaned forward, his exoskeleton creaking. Impossible. Their defensive capabilities aren't sophisticated enough. Yet the evidence was clear on the display. Over 80% of the first wave had been neutralized before reaching their targets. The few that made it through caused damage, but nothing near what was expected. They're using some form of directed energy weapons we didn't detect in our scans, Kella reported, frantically analyzing the incoming data. And their response time. It's as if they were prepared for us. Before Thrax could issue new orders, the tactical display lit up with warnings. Multiple launches detected from Earth's surface and orbital platforms. The tactical officer reported, voice rising in pitch. Sir, they're using nuclear-tipped missiles against our ships. Nuclear weapons against void vessels. Thrax actually laughed. Their radiation shielding is pathetic. They'll destroy themselves before. His words cut off as the first explosion rocked the fleet. One of their scout ships vanished from the tactical display. Impossible, Thrax whispered. Then louder, report. The humans have modified their nuclear weapons, Kellett explained, studying the readings with growing alarm. They've contained the radiation and maximized the electromagnetic pulse effect. They're specifically targeting our shield generators. 4 more ships disappeared from the display as Thrax watched in stunned silence. This wasn't merely unexpected. It defied everything they knew about species at this technological stage. All ships, full back to defensive formation Delta, Thrax ordered, his voice steady despite his shock. Launch second wave immediately. For the next 3 days, the Vrexian fleet engaged in what should have been a simple conquest, but had somehow transformed into a genuine battle. The humans had unified with shocking speed, combining their military forces and technologies in ways that suggested they had prepared for this possibility. By the 5th day, Thrax found himself summoning his command staff for an emergency council. "Explain this," he demanded, gesturing to the tactical display, showing the loss of nearly 30% of their invasion force. "How are they adapting so quickly? We've conquered 17 worlds, and none have offered this level of resistance." Science Officer Kella stepped forward, her scales now a pale blue that indicated extreme stress. "Sir, we've been analyzing their communication patterns and historical records. The humans appear to be unique among species we've encountered. While most civilizations develop warfare as a response to external threats, humans have been fighting among themselves throughout their entire history. So they're aggressive. That hardly explains their resilience," Thrax countered. "It's more than that, sir," Kella continued. "Most species we've encountered develop technology for peaceful purposes, then adapted it for warfare when necessary. Humans frequently develop technology specifically for warfare, then found peaceful applications later. Their entire innovation model is inverted." Strategic Officer Mevex nodded gravely. "And there's something else, Commander. Their entertainment media, what they call fiction, contains thousands of scenarios involving alien invasions. They've been mentally rehearsing this conflict for generations." Thrax stared at the tactical display, watching as another Vrexian ship's signature flickered and disappeared. "You're telling me we invaded a species that's been preparing to fight us without even knowing we exist?" "Yes, Commander," Kella confirmed. "And there's worse news. They've captured one of our damaged ships and are already reverse engineering our technology." On Earth, General Maya Chen of the United Earth Defense Force studied the holographic projection of the alien flagship. Around her, the International Command Center beneath Mount Cheyenne hummed with activity as personnel from formerly hostile nations worked in perfect coordination. "Their technology is superior," she acknowledged to her staff officers. "But their tactics are predictable. They fight like a species that's never faced a real challenge." Colonel Okafor of the African Union pointed to the alien formation. "They maintain perfect geometric patterns regardless of our attack vectors. No adaptation, no innovation in the field." "That's our advantage," Chen nodded. "Humanity has been killing itself in creative ways since we learned to use tools. We know warfare in our bones." She turned to the engineering team. "How soon until we can deploy the modified weapons?" Dr. Sato, head of the Reverse Engineering Division, looked up from his tablet. "The captured alien ship has yielded significant insights. We've adapted their shield technology to our vessels and modified our nuclear warheads to penetrate their defenses. Production is underway at facilities worldwide." Chen smiled grimly. "Good. Prepare Operation Thermopylae. Let's show our visitors what happens when you pick a fight with the wrong species." Back on the inevitable conquest, Thrax received increasingly alarming reports. The humans weren't merely defending. They were counterattacking with weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics no rational species would employ. "They sacrificed one of their own vessels to destroy 3 of ours," the tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with agitation. "The humans on board deliberately overloaded their reactor while grappled to our ships. No species sacrifices its own like that," Thrax muttered. Kella reviewed the incoming data. "They have a concept they call acceptable losses. Their entire strategic framework is built around the assumption that victory justifies sacrifice." As Thrax contemplated this disturbing information, the ship suddenly rocked violently. "Direct hit to our lower hull," the tactical officer shouted. "They've breached our shields using—" "Sir, they're using modified versions of our own weapons." Thrax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In just over a week, the humans had not only reverse-engineered Phyrexian technology, but had improved upon it. It was unprecedented. "Commander," Mivex said quietly, "I recommend we withdraw and reassess. The Empire has conquered many worlds, but we can acknowledge when." "No retreat," Thrax interrupted, his pride still outweighing his growing concern. "Send in our remaining forces. We will crush these mammals." As he gave the order, Thrax couldn't silence the voice in his mind that whispered a terrible truth. The Phyrexians hadn't started a war with a primitive species. They had awakened a sleeping predator that had been honing its skills against itself for millennia. And now that predator had turned its full attention to the stars. The unexpected resistance and reckoning. Captain Maya Chen watched through the viewscreen of her vessel, the UES Defiance, as Earth's unified fleet approached the Phyrexian formation. What was once a cobbled-together assortment of military spacecraft was now a formidable armada, retrofitted with adapted alien technology, in astonishingly short time. Engineering teams worldwide had worked without sleep, fueled by a combination of fear, determination, and the universal human response to being backed into a corner. Innovation born of desperation. "All ships report ready, Captain," her XO, Commander Rashid, announced from his station. "The new shields are holding at 92% efficiency." Chen nodded, studying the enemy formation. The aliens maintained their perfect geometric pattern, beautiful in its mathematical precision and utterly predictable in its tactical inflexibility. "They still don't understand who they're fighting," she murmured, more to herself than to her crew. Then, louder, "Signal the fleet. Execute Operation Thermopylae." The human fleet suddenly broke formation, scattering in seemingly chaotic patterns that made no sense to conventional military doctrine. The Phyrexian response was immediate. Their ships adjusted to maintain optimal firing solutions on the largest human vessels, exactly as Chen had predicted. "They took the bait," Rashid confirmed, watching the tactical display. "Their targeting systems are focused on our capital ships." Chen's smile was cold. "Launch the Trojan payloads." From the scattered human fleet, hundreds of small objects deployed. Barely more than missiles, but each carrying a precious cargo. A single tactical nuclear warhead encased in a shell of reverse-engineered Phyrexian shield technology, modified to be invisible to their sensors. On the Phyrexian flagship, the tactical officer reported with satisfaction. "The humans are retreating, Commander. Their formation has broken." Thrax narrowed his eyes, studying the display. Something felt wrong. Those smaller signatures. Analyze them. Before the officer could respond, the first wave of Trojan payloads reached their targets. Simultaneous nuclear detonations blossomed across the Phyrexian fleet, each precisely calibrated to collapse shield generators before the main explosion. The command deck of the inevitable Conquest rocked violently as nearby ships disintegrated. "We're being swarmed," the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple detonations throughout the fleet. They're targeting our shield emitters with precision strikes." Thrax gripped the command console, his exoskeleton creaking with tension. "How did they identify the weak points in our shield matrix? That information is encrypted in our most secure databases." Science Officer Kella worked frantically at her station. "Sir, they've not only reverse-engineered our technology, they've improved it. These humans don't think like any species we've encountered. They approach problems from angles we wouldn't consider." "Return fire with everything we have," Thrax ordered. "Target their largest vessels." As the Phyrexian fleet concentrated fire on the human capital ships, the smaller, faster vessels of Earth's fleet executed the second phase of Chen's strategy. They darted between the geometric Phyrexian formation, disrupting their carefully maintained patterns and forcing them to adjust firing solutions constantly. "They fight without coordination," Thrax observed with disgust. "There's no central strategy, no unified approach." "That's not quite accurate, sir," Mivex countered, studying the patterns. "They're employing what appears to be multiple simultaneous strategies. Each vessel commander seems to have tactical autonomy within a broader framework. Impossible. Thrax dismissed. No military can function effectively without strict hierarchical control. Yet the evidence before him suggested otherwise. The human fleet moved like a swarm of insects, each component responding independently to threats while contributing to the greater whole. It was warfare unlike anything in the Phyrexian tactical database. On the Defiance, Chen received confirmation that the Trojan payloads had achieved their primary objective, disrupting the enemy's formation and damaging their communication systems. Phase 3, she ordered. All ships with boarding teams, move into position. This was the most audacious part of her plan, and the one most questioned by Earth's unified command. Traditional military doctrine would never approve sending soldiers to board enemy vessels in the middle of a space battle. But traditional doctrine had never contemplated an enemy like the Phyrexians, nor the unique adaptability of human fighters. Boarding teams away, Rashid confirmed as specialized shuttles launched from multiple vessels. Time to target. 3 minutes. Chen nodded grimly. Take us in closer to the flagship. I want their commander's full attention. The Defiance surged forward, its advanced engines, a hybrid of human and Phyrexian technology, pushing it to speeds that would have been impossible just days earlier. The flagship's weapons immediately tracked the approaching vessel, exactly as Chen had anticipated. They're predictable to a fault, she observed. No commander would expose their ship like this, unless they were human. As the Defiance engaged the Phyrexian flagship in a direct confrontation, drawing its fire and attention, the boarding shuttles approached their targets throughout the enemy fleet. Each carried a small team of soldiers equipped with weaponry designed specifically to combat the Phyrexians, another product of humanity's frantic reverse engineering efforts. Supreme Commander Thrax was so focused on the audacious human vessel challenging his flagship that he initially missed the reports of boarding actions throughout his fleet. Sir, his tactical officer finally broke through his concentration. Human boarding parties have breached multiple vessels. They're targeting our engine cores and command centers specifically. Thrax turned his attention to the fleet-wide tactical display with growing horror. In just minutes, the humans had turned his perfectly organized assault force into chaos. Ships were going dark or reporting critical systems failures. Some had become entirely unresponsive. How are they neutralizing our crews so effectively? He demanded. Our warriors are superior in both strength and protection. Kella analyzed incoming data from the ships still able to report. The humans are using focused electromagnetic pulses that disrupt our neural systems without affecting their own biology. They're exploiting our physiological differences. Before Thrax could process this information, the deck beneath him shuddered violently. Direct hit to our engineering section. The tactical officer reported. Shield generators are failing. We have multiple hull breaches on lower decks. And, Mivex added grimly, sensors detect human boarding craft approaching our position. For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Thrax felt a sensation he couldn't immediately identify. After a moment, he recognized it. Fear. Prepare the command staff for evacuation, he ordered. We must preserve the Empire's knowledge of this species. When Mivex hesitated, Thrax added, That's an order, strategic officer. The Empire must be warned about what we've discovered here. As Mivex reluctantly complied, organizing the preservation of critical data and the evacuation of key personnel, Thrax turned his attention back to the tactical display. The human vessel that had so boldly challenged his flagship was now joined by 2 others, coordinating their attack with a precision that belied their supposedly primitive status. These aren't the actions of a pre-FTL civilization, he muttered. We've been deceived somehow. The battle continued for another hour, with the Phyrexian fleet's advantages in technology and firepower steadily eroded by the humans' adaptability and willingness to employ tactics that no Phyrexian commander would consider. Ships were sacrificed to create tactical openings. Smaller vessels deliberately collapsed their own shield generators to create powerful electromagnetic pulses, Individual commanders made decisions in the field without consulting the chain of command. It was chaos by Vrexian standards, and it was devastatingly effective. When the boarding party finally breached the command deck of the inevitable conquest, Thrax stood ready, determined to face his defeat with dignity. The blast doors slid open to reveal a squad of human soldiers, led by a female who removed her helmet as she approached. "Supreme Commander Thrax, I presume?" Captain Chen asked, her voice translated by a device clearly reverse-engineered from Vrexian technology. "You know my name," Thrax observed. "We've learned a great deal about your species in a very short time," Chen replied. "Your databases weren't as secure as you believed." Thrax's mandibles clicked in what passed for a bitter laugh among his kind. "You've proven more formidable than anticipated, human. But you've only defeated an expeditionary force. The Empire will send more ships when we fail to report back." Chen smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "We're counting on it, Commander. We've already begun mass-producing ships with your propulsion technology. By the time your reinforcements arrive, we'll be ready to take the fight to your home systems." Thrax felt his blood run cold. "You would start an interstellar war. Your civilization would be annihilated." "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged. "But there's something you should understand about humans, Commander. Throughout our history, we've faced extinction-level threats, most self-imposed. Ice ages, plagues, world wars, climate collapse. Each time, we adapted and emerged stronger." She stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "We don't bow to existential threats, Commander Thrax. We eliminate them." As Thrax was led away in restraints, the terrible truth dawned on him fully. The Vrexians hadn't begun a simple conquest of a primitive species. They had awakened a sleeping giant, a species that had honed its capacity for warfare against itself for millennia, and was now turning that terrible focus outward to the stars. The Empire wasn't facing a mere setback. They had started a war with the wrong species, and the galaxy would never be the same.